What if the ancient world was never truly isolated, and long before modern maps and compasses, people were already crossing oceans that we assume were impossible to navigate? Stay with me, don't scroll, because this changes how we see human history. Keep watching. Across the vast blue of the Pacific, people reach remote islands like Easter Island with nothing but stars, waves, wind patterns, and memory to guide them, and the precision of these journeys still shocks modern sailors. These navigators didn't have metal ships, GPS, or written charts, yet they crossed distances that today require engines and satellite guidance. Their knowledge lived inside stories, chants, and mental maps of the sea, passed down through generations until entire ocean highways were memorized by heart. This wasn't random drifting. It was deliberate exploration, controlled movement across thousands of kilometers of open water, and the fact that these voyages succeeded again and again suggests a level of maritime mastery that history books rarely credit. In the vast network of islands across Polynesia, settlement patterns reveal purposeful expansion, not accidents. People carried plants, animals, tools, and traditions with them, meaning these voyages were planned migrations, not desperate escapes. The same crops and cultural markers appear across islands separated by immense distances, hinting at routes traveled repeatedly over centuries. Some researchers even point to genetic and botanical links between islanders and faraway lands, including connections with Madagascar, where African and Southeast Asian ancestry blended in ways that only long-distance sea travel can explain. This suggests ancient sailors crossed not just one ocean, but possibly multiple seas, building a web of contact that modern history only recently began to recognize. Keep watching, because every new clue tightens a net around forgotten global network. Far from the Pacific, ancient Mediterranean sailors were also pushing the limits of their known world. The people of Phoenicia were famed traders and shipbuilders who hugged coastlines, then dared to move beyond them, establishing trade routes that stitched together distant cultures. Their ships carried goods, ideas, and navigation techniques across the Mediterranean and possibly beyond, shaping early globalization in slow, wooden waves. Meanwhile, centuries later, Norse sailors crossed the stormy North Atlantic, reaching Greenland and Iceland before pushing further west toward lands later known as Vinland, led by figures like Leif Erikson. These weren't blind drifts across the sea. They were calculated risks taken by people who understood winds, currents, and seasonal patterns well enough to attempt return journeys. That ability to go out and come back is the true mark of navigation, and it tells us these sailors possess systems of knowledge that rival the early stages of modern seamanship. What's most unsettling is how similar the logic of navigation becomes across cultures that supposedly never met. Reading the stars, tracking wave patterns, observing bird flight, memorizing cloud formations, and sensing subtle changes in wind were techniques used in distant regions by people separated by oceans and millennia. This raises a question that refuses to go away. Did ancient navigators independently discover the same methods, or were some of these techniques shared through contact we have yet to fully trace? The ocean, often seen as a barrier, may have been the ancient world's greatest highway, a moving road that connected far-off lands for those brave and skilled enough to read it. As we uncover more evidence from archaeology, genetics, and maritime studies, the picture that forms is not of isolated civilizations, but of daring seafarers who treated the planet as navigable long before the age of maps. If this idea of ancient global navigation is bending your view of history, keep watching, follow for more forgotten voyages, and stay curious, because the oceans still carry the echoes of those who crossed them first. What if the maps of the ancient world were wrong on purpose, hiding routes and lands known only to a few elite navigators? Don't scroll. Stay with me, because this part exposes how knowledge of the seas may have been controlled. Keep watching. Navigation was power, and in many ancient societies, power was guarded carefully. Sailors who knew how to read deep ocean currents, seasonal winds, and star paths held knowledge that could open trade routes, secure rare resources, and give entire kingdoms an advantage. This meant navigation skills were often kept within closed circles, passed down through families, guilds, or priestly groups rather than shared freely. The ocean was not just water. It was a strategic network, and knowing how to move across it meant controlling wealth, influence, and survival. Across ancient trade routes, evidence suggests that some maritime knowledge traveled quietly, hidden inside myths and religious stories rather than written openly. Tales of sea gods, sacred stars, and forbidden directions may have been symbolic ways to encode navigation techniques without revealing them directly to outsiders. When societies collapsed, burned, or were conquered, this knowledge vanished with the people who carried it. Libraries could be destroyed, but even more fragile were the oral traditions that taught sailors how to cross open water without landmarks. Once the chain of memory broke, entire ocean pathways were lost, leaving later generations to assume those routes had never existed. There are also signs that some long-distance contact was intentionally erased from official records. When historians rely only on written sources, they miss the movement of cultures that communicated through trade, marriage, and migration without leaving behind formal texts. Objects found far from their places of origin, foreign materials, unfamiliar tools, shared design patterns, hint at contact that official histories never acknowledged. These scattered clues suggest that ancient people may have reached lands we do not credit them with discovering, and that some of these journeys were downplayed or forgotten as empires rewrote their past to suit political or religious narratives. What makes this more unsettling is that the sea itself erases evidence. Wooden ships rot, camps vanish beneath waves, and ports shift with changing coastlines. Even if ancient navigators reached distant shores, the physical proof may have been swallowed by time. The lack of wrecks or harbor remains does not mean the journeys never happened. It may only mean the ocean kept its secrets well. When we piece together fragments from genetics, artifacts, and cultural parallels, a faint map of forgotten routes begins to appear, suggesting that the planet may have been navigated in fragments long before the modern age believed it possible. If this hidden side of ancient navigation is opening your eyes, keep watching, follow for more lost connections, and stay curious, because the oceans remember what history forgot. What if the ocean itself was the teacher, and ancient people learned to read it the way we read books today? Don't scroll. Stay with me, because this is where navigation stops being guesswork and start looking like a science. Keep watching. Long before instruments, sailors observe how waves bend around islands, how swells travel in consistent directions across open water, and how subtle changes in color and temperature signaled nearby land. They memorize the behavior of winds that returned each year, learn which birds flew out to sea at dawn and returned by dusk, and use the night sky as a living map, where the rising and setting of specific stars marked invisible pathways across darkness. This knowledge wasn't random. It was refined through generations of trial, loss, success, and survival, creating mental navigation systems as complex as any early chart. Some voyagers built vessels specifically designed for endurance, not speed, prioritizing stability and cargo space so families, animals, seeds, and tools could survive weeks or months at sea. These journeys were not reckless leaps into the unknown. They were calculated expansions into routes tested many times before. Even the decision of when to leave shore was timed with seasons, wind cycles, and ocean patterns that reduce risk. Over time, these patterns form an invisible map shared within communities, allowing people to travel between distant lands with surprising reliability. The ocean became a memory palace. Each current and star point reminder direction, danger, or safe passage. What's striking is how similar this deep reading of nature appears across distant cultures. Independent groups learned to navigate by feeling the rhythm of waves through their vessels, sensing when land lay beyond the horizon, and trusting environmental cues that modern sailors often ignore because machines now speak for them. This suggests that ancient navigation was not primitive. It was embodied knowledge, trained into the body and senses. When that knowledge disappeared, replaced by tools and charts, the skill of reading the sea itself began to fade, making the ancient navigators seem almost mythical by comparison. If this way of seeing the ocean is shifting how you think about ancient travel, keep watching, follow for more forgotten skills, and stay curious, because the sea still speaks to those who know how to listen. What if ancient navigators didn't just cross oceans, but quietly connected cultures in ways we still refuse to accept? Don't scroll. Stay with me, because the clues are subtle but everywhere. Keep watching. Across distant shores, we find unexpected similarities in boat designs, fishing tools, weaving patterns, and even ceremonial practices that feel too specific to be coincidence. These parallels hint at contact that left cultural fingerprints without leaving written records. When travelers arrive in new lands, they don't only bring goods, they bring stories, techniques, and ways of seeing the world. And over time, those influences blend so deeply into local culture that their foreign origin becomes invisible. This makes ancient contact hard to prove, because shared ideas leave softer traces in shared artifacts. Genetic echoes also whisper of long-distance movement. Small traces of ancestry appear in populations far from where their roots should be, suggesting that a few voyagers settled, intermarried, and became absorbed into local communities. These travelers wouldn't have arrived as conquerors, but as small groups or individuals, leaving behind just enough of themselves to be noticed centuries later by scientists searching for patterns. Over time, storms, migrations, and cultural shifts erase a memory of where these people came from, leaving only faint biological clues that the world had once been more connected than we thought. There's also the uncomfortable truth that some discoveries challenge established narratives and are therefore met with skepticism or ignored. When evidence suggests early contact between distant regions, it threatens tidy timelines and familiar stories of progress. It's easier to believe civilizations developed in isolation than to accept that the ancient world may have been threaded together by fragile sea routes and courageous travelers whose names are lost. This doesn't mean every similarity proves contact, but it does mean the door to ancient global movement is wider than most history books allow. If these hidden connections are changing how you see the past, keep watching, follow for more forgotten links, and stay curious, because history is often bigger than the stories we were taught. What if the greatest journeys in human history were made by people whose names we will never know? Don't scroll. Stay with me, because this is where the story becomes personal. Keep watching. The ancient navigators who crossed vast oceans were not legendary heroes recorded in stone. They were families, elders, apprentices, and quiet experts who trusted knowledge carried in memory, rhythm, and observation. Their courage didn't come from certainty, but from experience passed down across generations, shaping a worldview where the ocean was not an enemy, but a living path. Every departure from shore was a choice to step into uncertainty, guided by stars, winds, and belief that land waited somewhere beyond the horizon. As time passed, empires rose that valued walls and borders more than movement, turning attention inward and slowly forgetting the old sea roads. Written histories favored kings and battles, not the slow, patient work of exploration done by ordinary people. When those stories faded, later generations looked at the same oceans and assumed they had always been barriers rather than bridges. Yet the evidence scattered across islands, coastlines, cultures, and even within human DNA suggests that the world was once more connected by water than by land. The planet may have been explored in fragments, through countless small journeys rather than one grand voyage, stitched together by people who never imagined their travels would one day challenge modern assumptions. Today, as we rediscover ancient navigation techniques and study the subtle traces of contact, the past begins to feel less distant and more daring. It reminds us that human curiosity has always pushed against the edge of the known world, even when the tools were simple and the risks were enormous. If this reimagining of ancient explorers has shifted your view of history, keep watching, follow for more lost journeys, and stay curious, because the oldest maps were drawn in the minds of those who dare to sail.